fact, it's really interesting that everything you just explained there in the last kind of moment or two sums up maybe the next player we want to talk about, who's also an AC Milan winger, who also maybe has to leave AC Milan, which is interesting because Milan haven't been terrible this season. They've not been great. Obviously, they're well off the pace in terms of catching their cross-city rivals, not even cross-city, actually cross-stadium rivals in Inter Milan. But they're still third in Serie A. And of course, I'm talking about Rafael Leão, who's another player who's attracted a lot of interest in the market value forums, and is the third player we wanted to talk about on this segment, actually. One user says, an inconsistent player whose head isn't in the game. A few seasons ago, I would have paid over 100 million euros for him. The shooter's obviously got a lot of money, but now I don't think he's worth more than 50. Another says, I completely agree. I don't think he's a first-team regular for any Champions League side these days, so it's going to be difficult to get 50 million euros for a player who's no longer in his prime. Another user said he's massively overrated. People have been waiting for him to come into his own for years to no avail. He's technically mediocre, inconsistent physically. He's useless in defence and only comes to life once every couple of matches with one or two bursts of pace. And on and on and on a discussion goes. One user gives 3 reasons why his market value should drop quite significantly. They say performances, high salary, and age. At 27, he remains a viable asset, but is no longer considered a young talent worth betting on, but rather a player who must deliver immediate results. If he doesn't make an impact in Serie A today, in the league that matters, no one wants to pay for those wages just to send him to the stands. So, Manu, Rafael Leao's got a market value of 65 million euros. His peak was 90 million euros. Which lasted until June 2024. The average suggestion from users would be almost 20 million euro deduction in his market value. You know, when you look at his stats, it's not hard to see the justification for that. You know, once upon a time, this is a player who was, you know, getting 20, 25 goals and assists in Serie A every season. Right now, he's sitting on 12. Maybe like Pulisic, a player who's done okay in patches, but maybe lack consistency. And I think maybe the proof may be in the pudding here when we take a look at the players he's been linked with, the clubs that he's been linked with in recent years. Over the course of 2024 and 2025, he was linked to Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Chelsea, Real Madrid, PSG. You then look at towards the tail end of the window, it was Besiktas, Al Nassr, Galatasaray, and actually since the turn of the year and in 2026, only one club have actually been consistently linked with him on our market value. Not market value, on our rumour mill, and that's Manchester United. And I think that's quite a speculative report, to be honest. Sometimes the market does kind of flush out a lot of the kind of discussion here, and it would seem with Rafael Leão, Manu, we're talking about a player here who 2 or 3 years ago was really hot property, and as such his market value reflected that. But I think AC Milan may struggle to find a suitable buyer for him if they do want to sell him this summer.
Yeah, although I think his physicality, he's a big guy, right? 1.88 m, we have listed him, so 6'2", does make him a good Premier League target in many ways, right? He's a big guy. He has the ability to be, when he's fit, that is a big when and if, then he has that ability to be really impactful. I have to say, I have seen him a couple of times live in stadium, and I just kind of thought, meh, at the time. So, and that was, when his market value was significantly higher than it is now. And I remember at the time, we did quite a bit of reporting on his Bayern Munich links, and they ended up signing Luis Diaz instead, who I think significantly better player in many, many different ways. And I think, that is the kind of competition he's up to, right? Like up against and is compared to, right? He obviously has all the tools. He has the physicality to be successful in a more physical league. But it's just not, we've seen in the past, he has put it together, but he hasn't put it together in a while. And that is really something that is concerning, considering, this is a player. When I remember talking about this with Yatin Dietl, whenever I write all the English market value texts, right? And so I spoke to our Italy's area manager, Yatin Dietl, about him. And he, at the time, he's like, yeah, this is a player. He has the potential to be €100 million plus player down the road, right? And Yatin is a guy who really knows his players and has a good eye for players. He doesn't say something like that flippant. And so what I mean to say that is that the potential was there. Maybe perhaps still is, but it's just not, for whatever reason, he's not being able to translate it onto the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he turns 27 this summer, and I think it'd be really interesting to see what happens to him in the summer transfer window, because it strikes me as maybe the last opportunity for him to get a big move away from AC Milan.
Well, I do think that what happens with Portugal is going to be playing a really big role here, right? In my mind, I watched Portugal last summer at the UEFA Nations League's finals, where they were very, very good and won the tournament, the mini tournament, right? And among those 4 countries that were in it, France, Germany, Portugal, and Spain, they looked like the best of bunch. They didn't necessarily have the best players, but they looked the most like a team. And that, if with that in mind, I do think Portugal will play a huge role at the World Cup this summer. Maybe even a sleeper to win it, right? His sleeper. Maybe that's even, I wouldn't even say that's true. They are a team that could definitely win it. And so if they win the World Cup,
favorites.
Yeah, they might be. They really might be. Like, the individual pieces, are very, very good. And so if they win the World Cup and he plays a big role, I can see someone pay €100 million, no problem.